morning, everyone. Once again, good morning to all of you, and once again, welcome you all to this interesting seminar on EOG's data gems from the night by the distinguished speaker, Dr. Christopher D. Elvis. So while we are waiting for our Executive Director, Dr. Christopher Z. Garnier, to arrive, I have just got the permission to start, and then we shall begin now. And then when Dr. Chris is arrived, he can join with us. So again, I'd like to begin with welcoming all who are attending online and also face-to-face from this venue. This is a great pleasure and indeed an honor to have Dr. Christopher D. Elvis among us for this interesting seminar. I think we have just received our guests whom we are waiting for. So I will continue. I think the expected people are all here now. So let me begin with a few words saying about this seminar. I think the information that we have shared among the interested people, which are AIT staffs, faculties, and the students, plus the colleagues around, that this is a very interesting seminar, specifically for the people who are working in the field of remote sensing and GIS. Of course, it's a very unique area that Dr. Christopher is going to speak about. I'm not a very expert on that specific area, but I believe there is a huge use of this kind of data that Dr. Christopher is going to speak about, specifically people like me working in a very specific area, like I work in fisheries management and coastal zone management. We also understand and we feel the necessity of this kind of data. So I'm not going to go deep in this. I will request Dr. Chris to explain what are those and how we are actually using those kind of data and what are the applications and all those things. So with that, I will just begin with a little formal schedule that we have in front of us today. I will first introduce to that schedule to all of you so that you can get an idea that what is going to happen from now until 11:30. We will have a welcome message from Executive Director of AIT Extension, Dr. Christopher J. Garnier, and then followed by that, we will have a welcome message from Professor Nitin K. Tripathi from the Remote Sensing and GIS Field of Studies of Asian Institute of Technology. After that, I will provide a brief introduction of our speaker, and then, of course, I will hand over the mic to our speaker to deliver his seminar, and then we will have the Q&A sessions and the discussion, and finally we will have the closing of this seminar. So I believe we will finish everything by 11:30 as we are planning. Once again, welcome you all. Just a little announcement in terms of joining this seminar. So those of you who are joining face-to-face from this venue, we will request all of you to mute your mobile phone and the devices so that we do not have any interruption in terms of sound. We will have problem because we are broadcasting this through the Zoom. And also those who are attending through Zoom, I will request you to mute yourself or your devices. When you have a question, especially in the Q&A session, probably you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question. So that's a little request for all of you. I think with that, probably I introduce myself at the very beginning, but let me introduce again myself a bit. My name is Mohammad Zakir Hossain. I work with AIT Extension as a program director, and I'm the moderator for this session, for this seminar. And for all of your information, once again, that this is a joint seminar between Remote Sensing and GIS Field of Studies of Asian Institute of Technology and AIT Extension. So we have representatives from both these centers or both these units, and this seminar will start by the welcoming message from both these centers. So to begin with, I will welcome Dr. Christopher J. Garnier, the Executive Director of AIT Extension, to deliver his welcome speech. Dr. Chris, please.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Zakir. Before I talk about how important I think that this course is, I first just want to say that I'm grateful for AIT Extension staff. You guys always do such a phenomenal job. Thank you so much, Dr. Zakir, for the work that you put in. Now, let's not get us confused here. I'm Dr. Chris, and this is Dr. Christopher. And I know in this region, normally we go off our last names. And the reason that we come from the West, we go off our last names, but here we go off our first names. But you can call me just Chris or Dr. G. How about that? Listen, I am not a EOG expert. I never pretend to be. Honestly, I didn't even know what it was until it got dropped onto my desk. I said, Chris, I want you to come here and do an opening for it. But what AIT Extension is, if you don't know what that is we are the executive education corporate training arm of the Asian Institute of Technology. Those that are within the region, I don't think I have to talk too much about how strong our university is when it comes to academics. We have Professor Nitin here, who is well known for his research. He is our chair of our academic synod. Sir, I'm grateful that you're here. And the respect that goes into our three schools, SOM, the School of Management, SET, the School of Engineering and Technology, and SIR, the School of Environmental Resources and Development, they are pristine within this region. But I like to say that AIT Extension, that we are the fourth school, the fourth prong, if you say so, of this university. And we get the opportunity to bring in real life practitioners like Dr. Christopher. If you look at this guy's background from the JPL, NOAA, I'm looking at his background and I'm like, is this guy real? But the great thing, the beauty about AIT Extension is we can bring in practitioners, just like Dr. Christopher, to tell us what's relevant now, what's happening now. How is it important? How is it applicable to my life now? And we have the opportunity, a great deal, to bring in the academicians from our other three schools. But what's even greater about it is we have about 25,000 alumni from AIT Extension that range from engineering to sports analytics to leadership it doesn't really matter. Because our network allows us to cater to the needs of people that want to learn just like you. I tell my team all the time, believe in CI. Believe in CI. Well, Chris, what is CI? Continuous improvement. Not just continuous improvement in my center of AIT Extension or continuous improvement in our University of AIT, but internal continuous improvement. What you're going to hear from Dr. Christopher, I promise you have not heard before. And what does that do for you? It helps you to grow. It allows your ability to continue to improve, be where you want to be. And I'm grateful by being the executive director of AIT Extension that it's beyond just simply a master's or a doctorate degree. It's really, what can I take as right now as a practitioner, as someone that's actually working in the industry, what can I learn in order for me to take that back and lead in with my organization? And I'm grateful that I get the opportunity to be a part of a center that's able to help people to upskill, doesn't matter if they're 20 or they're 120. So with that, I'm so grateful that you are here. You guys are in for a great presentation. You have an individual who I haven't met, except for just right now, but I'm reading about his background. Man, if you can't learn something from this person, then you cannot learn. Enjoy your time. Contact me directly if we didn't deliver something that you want to deliver, because even myself, I'm always looking for continuous improvement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So as you have heard, we have two Christopher here. Both are Dr. Christopher for us, especially for the people from Asia, but they are also known with their last name that we have just understood. So yes, Dr. Christopher J. Garnier representing AIT Extension and AIT, and Dr. Christopher G. Elvis representing Colorado School of Mines. So I think at this time we have another welcome message from the Remote Sensing and GIS Field of Study of Asian Institute of Technology, will be delivered by Professor Nitin K. Tripathi.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Jakir, for inviting me and also giving opportunity for remote sensing and GIS to come together with AIT Extension and conduct this very prestigious event. I would like to thank Christopher Garnier first, that he's also bringing top quality researchers from the world to AIT and giving chance to our students to meet them. And I would like to thank Christopher Elvis to visit AIT again. He visited almost 2 decades back when Dr. Honda was there, and we had an advanced Center for Research on Remote Sensing across. Now that is called our Center for GIS now. So that time he came, and we were also impressed by the work he's doing. And now today our student, and we are very fortunate to go and listen to him while he was visiting the Southeast Asia. So myself and Jakir interacted, and we came to know that he's coming. So we thought to use this occasion to invite him to AIT again and share his long experience now. So you might have seen that any researcher is known by his credentials like H-index and citations. Christopher Elvis has H-index of 75, which is a dream for many scientists and almost unachievable. Yeah. So in the field of remote sensing. So I think this is a good chance how he has written such a interesting paper that 75 of his papers were at least cited by 75 people, although his citations are around 27,000. So it is a great thing to have a person like that and get some tips. So even after the seminar is over, I would request my PhD and master student to meet him, get some tips and blessings for their research so that AIT can get a little bit from him. That also will be a great thing for us to motivate. And Christopher Elvis, this part of research we are not doing much, that is using the nighttime data. 1 or 2 people have attempted it to see how the things are happening. Like I remember Professor Dr. Nagai has done it sometimes. And maybe my colleague Dr. Sarawut, who is the coordinator of academic program of remote sensing GIS, he knows that very little work has been done in this area. So this is a new area for us to use nighttime data and see many applications are there. And there are a lot of data products available already, as you are going to listen. So maybe this can open a new research stream altogether in AIT with the help of Dr. Christopher. And let us see anybody is interested. So there is a huge amount of experience, and with that, I will not keep you waiting for long. We should listen directly to Dr. Elvis. Thank you very much for visiting us, and look forward to visiting. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much for the introduction. And for 21 years, I worked for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency Administration, and I moved in 2019 to the Colorado School of Mines. And I'm so happy that I was able to get back to a university because I started my career at a university. Government is you don't have as much liberty to explore your areas of interest. You do have some, but also I just want to say I'm so pleased to be back at AIT. We traced it back to about 2002 was the last time that I had been here. And I had been here prior to that, and that visit is even more foggy in my memory, but I think this is the third time I've been to your campus. Now, I'm going to talk to you about data products that we make using nighttime satellite data, specifically from the Visible Infrared Imaging Radiometer suite. And most people use the daytime data, but there are phenomena that are related to human activities that it's easier to see at night. Here's my staff. By the way, I don't go by Christopher, I go by Chris. And so even students, you can just call me Chris. But I have a staff of 2, 3, 4 folks. I guess there were 5 or 6. We're the Earth Observation Group at the Payne Institute for Public Policy. Okay, so while we're getting that sorted out, the VIRS is designed for meteorology. And so all the spectral bands and the detection limits and the repeat cycle, it was all designed for the meteorologists. And so it does some very interesting things in terms of low light imaging that are not something that, if I as a scientist went to NASA, NOAA, and said, I'd like to have these capabilities, it would never happen. They'd say, oh, that's nice, but it's not gonna happen. But the meteorologists have enough clout with these government agencies that they were able to assemble teams to work on designing the requirements, and NASA and NOAA accepted that and went out and built it. The primary low-light imaging band is called the DNB, or day-night band. Here we go. Great. So these are the types of light sources that this instrument can see in various spectral bands. Well, what happened to it? There we go. There are lights from cities and towns. There are lights from boats. There are industrial sites. There are gas flares. There are fires. And so those are the basic types of phenomena that we do remote sensing for with this data source. As I mentioned, it's a meteorological sensor. It has a 3,000 kilometer swath width. It's in a polar orbit that goes around the poles in a circle, and the Earth turns underneath, and it's set so that it collects a complete set of daytime and a complete set of nighttime images every 24 hours. And here's some daytime data, and you can see it covers a very wide swath. Over here's China, and way out here is Pacific Ocean, and here's the Korean Peninsula, and you can see these beautiful cloud patterns. It has, most of the users work with the daytime data. Now, I mentioned the low light imaging. There's the day-night band, which has a 1,000,000-fold amplification. And that's done to enable the detection of moonlit clouds. Then The other 4 spectral bands that collect what I will call low-light imaging data are in the near-infrared and the shortwave infrared. And these are daytime channels that continue to collect at night. And so their detection limit is designed to give a certain signal-to-noise ratio on dark objects, such as the ocean, using sunlight. And so NASA and NOAA continue to bring the data down, even at the night, for these spectral bands. And so I'll show you what that looks like in a moment, but basically you'll see the noise floor of the sensor, and then embedded in that are points of light that are radiant emissions from hot objects. And so although the detection limits are set for daytime, I still call it low light imaging because it's with no sunlight, it's low light. Okay, so here's a sample of the day-night band. Again, this is designed to detect moonlit clouds. And in addition to moonlit clouds, it detects lights from cities. And so over here, I can see clouds. This looks like fog right here. And then here's the lights of Manila. And then you can see little spots of light and even roadways. And so one of our product lines is specific to mapping lights on the Earth's surface. And so I have to say thank you to the meteorologists because they got us this capability. And we try to squeeze as much out of it as we can. So I'm going to talk now about our VIIRS Nightfire product. And so this one uses those 4 spectral bands that are daytime channels that continue to collect at night. And so here's the 9 spectral bands that we use in this data product. There's 2 near-infrared, 2 shortwave infrared, 2 midwave infrared, and 3 longwave infrared. And so these daytime channels, you can see it looks most of it looks dark, but then there are some features in here. This is actually a large wildfire in California several years ago. And so it's actually easier to see the features when there's no sunlight. If you know where to look, you can find them in the midwave infrared. And as you go to longer and longer wavelengths, those features gradually disappear because there's not enough radiant energy to be detected and distinguished from the background as you go to longer wavelengths. Likewise, if you go from here and here, shortwave infrared, to near infrared, you see the features fading out. And that's because again, you're getting further and further away from the wavelength having peak radiant emissions. Okay, so we began developing this product in 2012. As soon as we saw the first data, we had been tipped off that there were going to be some daytime channels that would collect at night. And we got the first data in April 2012. And as soon as we saw it, we knew that this was going to be a hit because we were going to be able to make a multi-spectral fire product. And so the initial funding for this was from the NOAA's Joint Core Satellite Program, which is the program office for VIIRS. And we had 3 years of funding and got this started. We got a second round of funding from the same source to work on development of an algorithm to split the analysis to identify both a flaming and a non-flaming component. And so not all pixels will yield that, but there are quite a few. And so we developed something successful. It's going to be VIIRS Nightfire version 4 that we hope to start producing later this year. And currently our largest funding source is the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, which is focused on gas flaring. And we have several commercial subscribers for that that are interested in that data as well. So here are what we call Planck curves. And so this is based on Planck's law, which allows you to model the radiant emissions of objects at different temperatures. And so here's wavelength, and here's radiant emissions. And so here are Planck curves for objects at different temperatures. And you notice that this is for the case where the object fills the field of view. So yeah, your instrument, the pixel, is seeing nothing but objects at this temperature. And in that special case, you really only need one spectral band to calculate the temperature because these lines don't cross. And so that's the principle behind the brightness temperature that meteorologists calculate that works quite well for large features like the ocean and clouds and the land surface. But the situation is quite different for subpixel subpixel infrared emitters. You need more than one spectral band. You need, the more you have, the better, actually. Okay, so here is a chart showing the spectral bands. Here's wavelength, and this is the spectral response, so it's normalized to 1. And so here's 7 and 8, those are near infrared, 10 and 11 are shortwave, 12 and 13 are midwave, 14, 15, and 16 are longwave infrared. And here, this dark red line is the Planck for a typical gas flare at 1800K. And so you see it peaks in the shortwave infrared. And when we made this chart, we said this explains a lot. Because for years, we had been looking at this spectral band from MODIS and wondering why we don't see very many gas flares. And it's because this is the traditional fire band that is widely used in remote sensing, and it is way off the trailing edge of radiant emissions for gas flares. To show you the advantage that nighttime observations have for infrared emitters, these are gas flares in North Dakota, and here's the daytime shortwave infrared, and it's dominated by reflected sunlight. And here's the same area at night in the same spectral band, and you can see all these spots. Those are gas flares in the shortwave infrared. And so they are basically, those features are swamped out when you're dealing with the reflected sunlight. And part of that is because the pixel footprint is so large. It's more than a square kilometer over here for this spectral band, more than a square kilometer. And the flares are usually just a few square meters. So this graphically shows why for gas flares and other infrared emitters, the nighttime is advantageous with an instrument like Beers. And so we run detectors across all these spectral bands. We find the spectral bands that have detection, and then we model the Planck curve. And so the traditional fire product uses this midwave infrared channel and one of the longwave infrared channels, and the algorithm looks for pixels that have a thermal anomaly. And so somebody might ask, well, why do you want to use so many spectral bands? And it's to get the Planck curves, because if we can get those, we can make calculations using physical laws. And here's another example. This is biomass burning. And so you can see that the Planck curve has shifted. This Planck curve has its peak radiant emissions at about 3 microns. If we look over here, the Planck curve has its peak radiant emissions around 2 microns. And so that's the expression of Wien's displacement law. Okay, so here's the physical laws we use for this product. We use Wien's Displacement Law to calculate the temperature. When you get the Planck curve, the peak wavelength of radiant emissions is the pointer to the temperature. Then we calculate the source area based on our knowledge of the pixel footprint size and the ratio of the observed Planck curve amplitude versus the Planck curve of an object at that temperature filling the field of view. And so that makes it possible for us to estimate at sub-pixel level how large is the area of combustion. And then we use the temperature and the source size as input into the Stefan-Boltzmann's law to get radiant heat in megawatts. And then we index that to flared gas volume. So we make estimates of flared gas volume using this data. Okay, and then in the next version of this product will actually split the flaming and non-flaming phases. And so we have a nice paper on this. We basically use the short wavelength channels to model the Planck curve for the flaming phase. We get the radiance for the flaming phase and subtract it from all the channels, and then we analyze the residuals to test whether there is an additional emitter present, in which case we can model its Planck curve and get another temperature and source size. Okay, so this is how we get the data. The satellite is in a 100-minute orbit and has a recorder. And when it goes over the North Pole, it plays back the data to a ground station in Svalbard, which is north of Norway, close to the North Pole. Then it goes by undersea cables to NOAA's National Satellite Operations Facility in Suitland, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. They do the initial processing and deliver those files to their primary customer, the National Weather Service. Now, the program office realizes that there's a lot more value to this data to other organizations. And so they have a data pool that they call Gravity, and we're authorized to get the data out of Gravity. And so we bring it to our university, we run our algorithms, and then we, one of the things that we do immediately is to send out alerts for the detections for particular areas. Okay, so here's an example of an alert for Beer's Nightfire for Indonesia and Malaysia. And so our aim is the satellite comes over between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning. It takes about 2 hours for us to get the data. And so our target to send out the alerts is 6 o'clock in the morning local time. And so this is what the alert looks like. It has the date. It has links to files, a CSV, which is the tabular form, and a KML that you can open up in Google Earth. And then there's an embedded graphic in the email that shows the area that's being monitored on a lat-long grid, and then the detections. And the detections are color-coded based on which orbit they came from. And so to cover all of Indonesia, it generally takes sections of about 3 orbits. And so the second embedded graphic shows an outline of the Earth, and then the orbits, suborbits that were used to generate the alert are color-coded here. Now, we run a similar alert for Thailand. And so if anybody is interested in that alert, it's so easy for me to add your email, and then you'll be getting these messages every morning. So we'd be happy to do that in case anybody is interested. We have alerts running for quite a few areas, actually. And so if the alert is already established, it's very easy to add more recipients. And then if you tap on the KML, you can see the data in Google Earth. And so here are the 3 orbits. And then there are the detections, these little colored marks. They're color-coded based on temperature. And so the hottest ones are red, then yellow, then green, blue, and purple is the coolest. And so that's a link in the email alert. And here's an example of a detection. In the KML, if you tap on any of these detections, you get a information panel that comes up. This one is for the Krakatoa volcano. And so we give you the spectral chart. Here's wavelength versus radiance. You can see the radiance of the individual channels. You can see which ones we had detection in. This one had detection in a lot of spectral bands. And then the background dominates the long wave infrared. And so this one is at 1093K and has about 166 square meters. And so that's the content that's in the KML product. The tabular form is the CSV. Now we have 10 years of data as we got this product going in 2012. And so one of the things that we can do for persistent infrared emitters is to assemble temporal profiles. And so this is for a gas flare. I believe it's in the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, it says MEX. And so we have a graphic that we call the dashboard that has the one profile here is the radiance in the shortwave infrared. And so you can see that early in 2012, there wasn't very much activity, and then there was sporadic activity, and then it got more steady, and then there's a gap here, and then you see it continues, and then it drops off substantially midway through 2021, and there's still detection, but it's at a very low level. Then we have a temperature profile, and so you can see this temperature is at about 1800K. I see, oh, here's the average, 1731K. And then we calculate the methane equivalence of the combustion because we know it's a gas flare and they burn mostly methane. And but there can be other constituents, higher level hydrocarbons, for instance, propane or butane. And so we calculate that for all the detections. Now, one of the things I see here is that there are some brief periods where you get a very high signal. And those are generally upsets, where something happened at the facility that they couldn't do what they normally do with the gas, and so they burned it off. Okay, now about detection limits. We did a paper on detection limits for this data product, and this is actual data from a month from our product. Here's temperature, and here's detectable area in square meters. And then these curved lines are the detection limit lines for the different spectral bands. Now, you need to have at least two spectral bands, detection in at least two spectral bands to calculate the temperature. And so the spectral band that has the lowest detection limits is the day-night band. However, we don't use it in this product at this time. The mid-wave infrared has lower detection limits at cool temperatures over here, but at once you get above, say, 800K, then the spectral bands that have the lowest detection limits are in the shortwave infrared. And so here's this red line is M10 at 1.6 microns, and this yellow line is M11 at 2.2 microns. And so there's a gap right in here, for instance, where you have detection in, you can have detection in M11, but none of the other spectral bands have detection limits low enough. and so we don't have temperatures in here. You'll also notice that there's a bimodal temperature situation. So here is the hot group, that's mostly gas flares, and then there's a cooler group. And that is dominated by biomass burning, but then there are industrial sites that emit in this range as well. Okay, so how does our product, Enact, differ from the hotspot? So traditional Modus and Beers fire detections are referred to as hotspots. They're generated using a mid-wave infrared channel, using a long-wave infrared channel as a reference. It's basically a single band detection, and so you can't calculate the temperature. They calculate something called fire radiative power, but that is done assuming that the infrared emitter has a temperature of 1,000, because they don't have a way to calculate the temperature, so they assume a temperature, and that allows them to calculate a fire radiative power in megawatts. Nightfire, on the other hand, we have enough spectral bands that we can find the Planck curve, we can calculate the temperature, we can calculate the source size, and we can use those terms as input into the Stefan-Boltzmann's law to get radiant heat, which has units of megawatts that matches this fire radiative power. And NASA and NOAA still run that hotspot generator. They don't make a multispectral fire product, and I've asked them why don't they make a multispectral fire product, and they say, well, they prefer to run a single algorithm that works day or night. So Nightfire only works at night. They prefer to have only a single algorithm that they can run continuously through the day and night, and they want to have product continuity back to the AVHR records, which go back to 1980. Okay, and we've got some papers that we've written over the years on this product. Okay, nighttime lights. This is our second product area, and it's actually our flagship product. It is basically a map of lights at the Earth's surface, and we have these going back from DMSP back to 1992. With VIIRS, they go back to 2012. We have annual, monthly products, and then nightly profiles in selected areas. And here's an example of what you can find in this product. This is in northern India, and here's the image of nighttime lights in 2012, and then 2016, and then 2019. And so you, step by step, you can see that the lights are spreading and they're getting brighter. We can do some other interesting things with this data source. We can look for power outages. This is looking at a power outage in Lebanon on October 9th, 2021. There was a grid power failure, and we make a color composite using a recent reference image of nighttime lights as red, the incoming nighttime light image as green, and then the long wave infrared as blue, and enhance the contrast, and we can make areas that normally have lighting that where the lighting's out or dimmed, a reddish or orange color. We've also been applying it to Ukraine, and so we saw the lights go out in Ukraine, and the lights have stayed on in Kiev, in the center, and actually now they're starting to return. And then you see new lights, which show up as green, where there's where it's a result of the conflict, and they look fuzzy because of clouds and smoke. Okay, now this is about the nightly temporal profiles, and so we have a program to generate grids of nightly temporal profiles, where we get the data from every night, we screen out the cloudy data, and we get things like this. This one is interesting. This is in Sana'a, Yemen, and so they were bombed by the Saudis in middle of March 2015, And so you can see they had a fairly bright signal prior to that. This is time, and this is brightness. And so the lights were put out, and very, very slowly the lights are starting to come back. Now, you can also see these spikes. Once a year, there's a spike in the brightness of lights. And I make the comment that that's an indication there are still people there, even though the lights are out. Those spikes are occurring, those match up with Ramadan. And so once a year, the people that are there practice their Ramadan activities, and so we know they're still there because once a year there's some lights. And then this is an image that shows the power outage as red versus time. And so this is going a month at a time and showing the power outage. Okay, we've got papers on this data product as well. And then boat detection. The VIIRS sensor, people are familiar probably with the fact that you can use the day-night band to map city lights, but then what about the lights out in the water? And so here's an image. This shows Jakarta right here. I can actually see the outline of the island of Java based on lights. And then the southern coast of Kalimantan is over here. And out in the middle of the Java Sea, there's a cluster of points, flecks of light out in the water, and those are lights from boats. And they're actually using lights to attract catch. So the boats go out in the water. It's a very common practice throughout Asia. And they turn on their lights, and then they wait. And so most of the light probably goes up in the sky, but some of it comes back down into the water column, and it creates a gradient, a brightness gradient that gets brighter inside the water column as you approach the boat. So it draws sea life towards the boat. And so later in the night, they'll have a large swarm of fish and squid, and they're very easy to catch. And so we developed an algorithm to find those spots of light out in the water. And so we start with images, and which are quite large, and we run our algorithm, and we generate points. And so there's a huge data volume reduction by going from images to points. We do this globally, and there are quite a few user groups and even university researchers that work with this data. We also have an alert for this product, and we have an alert running for Thailand and a number of areas in Asia. This particular alert is for the Philippines, and like the fire detection alert, we have a CSV and a KML links in the alert. We indicate the number of detections, 1619. We have an embedded graphic that shows the area being monitored, and then all the detection points. And then we have a globe graphic that shows the orbit section that's used to make the alert. And so if you're interested to have this type of alert for Thailand, just let me know. Okay, so with 10 years of data, we can make summary grids of the detections from the boat algorithm. And if we have time, I can show you Thailand with this data product. But this is looking at the area around Singapore. So here's Malaysia, here's Sumatra. And so I can see some features here. We're still trying to figure out what they are, but it looks like there are parking lots for boats near ports, many ports around the world. There are point clusters. There are some grids, stack lines, Let me go to the next slide. So I enhanced the contrast here. I bumped up the contrast, and now you can see these features more clearly. There are points out in the water that have many more boat detections than the surroundings. And so in some cases, those are platforms that are completely unrelated to fishing. In some cases, there are flares, but most of them appear to be locations of fish aggregating devices, which are stationed in the water. They can be tethered or be on a platform, but they have some structure in the water that over time attracts sea life. And it will grow algae, and organisms will colonize, and then the fish will come there to feed. And so the fishermen built these in order to enhance their catch. And it must work quite well because there's a lot of them. The other thing you can see are trails. This is the Malacca Straits. It's one of the busiest sea lanes on the planet. And given 10 years of data, you can actually see some trails. They're very fragmented, but you can see them that they're there. Now, if you looked at the nightly data, you wouldn't recognize it as a trail. You have to accumulate the signal over time for it to show up as a trail. These are apparently parking lots for freighters and tankers as they're waiting to go to port to load or unload. So those aren't fishing boats, those are actually boats that are just waiting, and they have the government's set up places where they can go. So they're not randomly scattered across the ocean surface. They tell them where they can go park. There are diffuse clusters. I can see there's a buffer around this island here. Here you can see stacked lines of points, and over here you can see some grid patterns. Okay, so we can also generate temporal profiles from this data source, because just like the fires, we've got 10 years of data. And so I hand drew vectors around some of these features to find out what their temporal profiles look like. And I'll show you the temporal profile for this feature right here, number 3. Okay, here it is, number 3. So here's the counts, here's time. Each year, the tick mark is for April 1st, and you can see that the signal comes up and down, and then comes up to its highest point just before, well, just around when COVID hit, around the end of 2019 and into early 2020. But look at this decline. And so I don't have an explanation for it, but obviously something really happened here that knocked the numbers down quite far. Okay, and then we've got a series of papers for this data product as well. And so it looks like I'm close to getting to a wrap up on the presentation. We developed all these algorithms. We basically looked at the data and we focused on the nighttime data, and we said, what can we pull out of this that we could use for our research and also for other researchers to work with, and even find commercial users for it. And so we got the idea looking at the image data, then I have a team, members of my team are programmers. We get the idea for the algorithm. We start with some prototype algorithms, and we look and see how they perform, and diagnose what we can do to make it better. And so we fine tune it, and then we run it every day. And so each day we bring in 300 gigabytes of nighttime VIIRS data, and for the boats and the fires, for each satellite, we distill that down to a couple hundred megabytes. So it's small enough that even scientists at a remote university could probably be able to download it. But we also break it up into sections. So if we have sections for individual countries, individual regions, and then we have the alerts. And so we get the data in near real time from NOAA, and our aim is to have the alerts sent out with a 4-hour temporal latency. So about 6 o'clock in the morning, we try to get the alerts out. And that's the quickest way that we have to get the data out. And so also with data extending back to 2012, we can derive temporal profiles and cumulative detection grids. And there's a wealth of information that you only see, spatial features that you only see when you accumulate the signal over some period of time. They won't be obvious in a single night of data. Currently, there are 2 VIIRS sensors operating. Number 3 is scheduled to launch later this year, and then there's 2 more after that. So the original VIIRS was launched in 2011 and is still producing data, so more than 10 years. So I think that we can be pretty sure that we're going to have VIIRS data until, say, about 2040. It remains to be seen, of course, but what normally happens is that towards the end, say around 2030, NASA and NOAA will start to plan the follow-on to VIIRS. It'll be an instrument that is even better, perhaps more spatial resolution, lower detection limits, perhaps more spectral bands. We don't know. But in general, the meteorologists are in the driver's seat. This time around, perhaps they'll consider some of the work we do with low-light imaging to add on some features that are going to benefit our product line. Okay, well, that's the end of my formal presentation. If we still have time, I can show you some of the data, including last night's data, if we still have time. Okay, let me do that. All right, great. So this is last night's, let's see, is there a microphone? Okay. All right, so this is last night's VIIRS Nightfire data. And you can see things are pretty quiet in Thailand. Let's go in and take a look. So this looks like an oil terminal, and perhaps there's a refinery there. And this spot, this detection, is very hot, and so we've color-coded it red. And so if you click on it, you get the spectrum and then metadata. And this detection, it has detection in the 2 shortwave infrared channels, and also it has a detection in the day-night band. And so that's enough to model the Planck curve. And so this one comes out at 1926 K. It is 0.2 square meters in size. And so that's consistent with the detection limit chart that I showed you earlier. The hotter the object, the smaller the size that you can see. And that's due to the temperature of the 4th power term in the Stefan-Boltzmann's law. And so as you go to cooler and cooler temperatures, you end up having to need a larger and larger area on the ground to be that temperature to get the radiance that will be detected by the instrument. So we have these quite a bit of information here. We have the lat long, the time, date time in UTC, date time in local, and so this says it was on the 28th. Oh, so it's yesterday's date at 1:49 in the morning. Okay, so I saw another one, a lower temperature one, we can go look at. Okay, we're gonna go look at this purple one. Oops, I wanted to zoom in, but you can see this one has the peak in radiant emissions has shifted to the mid-wave infrared. And so it doesn't even have a detection in the 2 near-infrared channels or the first shortwave infrared channels. It has a detection in the second shortwave infrared and the 2 mid-wave infrared. And so this one is at 631 K and is 400 square meters in size, according to our calculations. So I think I'll try to zoom in so that we can see what's there on the ground. I know this is not the fire season, so this could be an industrial site. So yeah, this is an industrial site. I'm not sure what kind of facility it is. Let's turn on the photos and see if anybody has placed a photo in here that we can look at. So, you know, I'm not an expert at identifying types of industrial facilities, but this is obviously an industrial facility, and there's a heat source there that is getting picked up. So we recently completed a 10-year survey of persistent infrared emitters, and this is probably a site that's in that data set. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you are the cumulative detections from boats in the Thailand region. Okay, so I'm now going to move this window over to Thailand. Here it is. Now, I know I can see right away I'm going to have to adjust the contrast. So the way I do that is I bring my little window, the zoom window, into an area, and I generally use the square root. So there, now you can see there are spots out in the water. So there's like this diffuse cloud of boat detections over most parts of the Gulf of Thailand. But embedded in that, there are spots. And so based on what we know so far, most of those spots are fish aggregating devices. And so there's something here that I think is unusual that I want to show you is grid patterns. And so all I can say is you Thais are really organized because the boat detections in the Gulf of Thailand in many areas are forming grids. The screen isn't as good as what's on, the big screen here is not as good as what's on my screen, but you can see these lines they're actually grids. Let me see if I can get one tuned up. There's a really nice grid pattern in here. Okay, I'm going to share again. Look at that. There's a grid pattern in the boat detections in the Gulf of Thailand. I was flabbergasted when I saw this. I gave a similar talk to your Department of Fisheries in 2019 that was organized by SEPDEC, which is the Southeast Asian Fishery Development Center. And I had told them in advance that I wanted to talk to Department of Fisheries staff that might help me figure out why there are grid patterns in the boat detections in the Gulf of Thailand. And so apparently they have a team that works on fish aggregating devices. And in Thailand, the Department of Fisheries requires that fish aggregating devices be registered. And so they have a registry, and when the guy saw this, his eyes bugged out, and he said that he had on his phone a map showing the registered fish aggregating devices, and it was a very sparse set compared to what we were looking at on the screen. And so I still don't have a clear answer. I would love to go out and take a look, or fly over, or take a boat, because there is a very regular grid. And I don't know who set it up. I don't know if anyone could do that without the government being involved in planning it. One of the interesting things is that these grids, they will continue, and then the pattern will shift a little bit. You get a different grid. And so there are multiple grids that are adjacent to each other in the Gulf of Thailand. Let's try and see another place. And then there's this line right here, and there's another line right here. Now this line, I was told, is due to a fishery closure that is active on this side and not on this side. And it's seasonal, but the fishermen appear to be adhering to that closure sufficiently that you can see the line in this cumulative years boat detection product. So that was, there are a lot of interesting things in this cumulative data. I'll go do another one. This is in the English Channel. So here's England, and here's France, and I can see a faint trace across here. It's probably a ferry boat, probably a passenger ferry, that crosses even after midnight. There are boats going across. There are other linear features. And then there are these squares and other shapes. This one has stripes. This one has diagonal lines. So I honestly don't know what they are. But I have a suspicion that some of these are those parking lots where the boats are asked to wait in a particular area that's cordoned off, that they can wait there for their turn to get into the port to load or unload. Others of them may be aquaculture. Oh yeah, I know where there's one for aquaculture. When I was at SEPTEC, there was a lady doctor from Japan, and when we looked at Japan, we saw this feature. And she said that those are scallop farms. And so for whatever reason, the scallop farms are using light at night, and it looks different from the fishing boats. So anyway, we just made this product about a month ago, and we're still exploring it. I'll be writing a paper describing how we made it and some of the things that we see. Yeah, this is one of the things that you can do when you have 10 years of data. These features, they wouldn't be obvious at all if you look at a single night of data, but if you pile on 10 years, there are things that start to come out. So anyway, I think I can stop there and I can respond to questions and we can have discussions. If either faculty or students are interested to work with this data, we'd be delighted to see you do that. And you can contact us by email, and we'll answer your questions and help you start to work with the data.
Thank you very much, sir. I think you can sit there. Maybe we can check from online first, online audience, if there is any question. So indeed, it was really fascinating. Online audience, if you have any question and you would like to ask, maybe you can unmute yourself, including your video, and then ask directly. You can also raise your hand. So, okay, so I see a question. Maybe I can read it out, Dr. Chris. So the question is, does light pollution affect dataset?
Well, our data set is light pollution. Yeah, so actually one of the things that we contend with is the glow that surrounds bright sources. And so most of our users are interested in the sources of light rather than the light that's scattering away from the sources. We actually want to have it both ways. We want to preserve, so we make one version of our nighttime lights data product where we haven't tried to do anything to screen out the glow that surrounds bright sources. And then we make a version where we try and trim it off, at least to some extent. But these data sources are what the light pollution community uses to model the spatial distribution of light pollution. Because the instrument is measuring the light that's escaping to space, and so they use the light that's escaping to space as an input into a atmospheric scatter model to model the light that's coming out of the sky back down towards the Earth. And they calibrate that with ground-based observations. And so it's really the most effective way to make global maps of light pollution. The light pollution is actually the light that's coming out of the sky. It's coming from the Earth, it goes up in the sky, and then a portion of it scatters back down towards the Earth. And so that's the light that the astronomers call light pollution because it obscures the astronomical features. And so there is also the light pollution that's coming directly from the light sources near the surface. Yeah, these data sets get used a lot in light pollution studies. And there are more and more of those types of studies getting published for more and more different types of organisms. Actually, one of the pieces of research that we did this past year is on flickering, because many lights that are supplied alternating current flicker, and they is Thailand 50 volts or 60 volts? In the US, we're 60 volts, and so most of the flickering is at 120 cycles per second. And so the countries that have 50 volt power supplies, the flicker will mostly be at 100 cycles per second. But that's an additional type of light pollution, the flickering, because it can affect organisms. Even if it's flickering faster than what your eye can see, it still has some effects. And that's another active research area.
Thank you. I think there isn't any question right now. If someone would like to ask, I can read it out. So maybe, yes, we can now look at our audiences here. I see Dr. Sarawut having a question.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And I want to say also, this is my third time I met you. First time I met you 20 years ago when I was a master student in AAP. Very nice again to see you. Now I'm working from some research like human mobility, taxi mobility, how they moving. And from your fishing, it's very interesting, like that you the boat fishing detection. Because I'm also talking with my friend who are in the Department of Fishery. They are controlled in the VMA system, and then we try to understand like the fishery mobility, how they're moving around. Again, the picture that you show at the pattern, grid pattern, is that one spot is one boat or one spot is one stop?
On the single light image,
Yeah.
I showed a single light image of the Java Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And and you see a lot of individual spots.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the spatial resolution that would allow you to say, yeah, there's only a single boat there.
Mm-hmm.
But we do know that the boats that are using lights will tend to spread out because otherwise they're splitting the catch. And so they have some incentive to spread out and not be close together because they're using the lights to basically harvest the largest volume of seawater that they can manage. Mm-hmm. So they have an inbuilt incentive to spread out. And so I'm sure there are cases where one spot actually contains several boats, but oftentimes I think that they're individual vessels.
Okay, so maybe because we are trying to get the data, request the GPS data for every boat from the Department of Fishery and try to understand their behavior or how they movement. Maybe I will try to match with your study, and even though they want to see maybe some boat which are not registered. Because they try to detect some boats are illegal one, and then so I think that will be the next intended future. I may contact you for more detail.
Yeah,
on that one.
Yeah. Well, actually, we've done a study cross-correlating VIIRS boat detections with BMS, vessel monitoring system, which is similar to AIS, but is more of a regional or countrywide type of beacon.
Okay.
And so the guy that actually developed that software, he left earlier this year, but he's not far away. I can put you in contact with him. The group that does the most as far as I know, on cross-correlating AIS and VIIRS boat detections is Global Fishing Watch. And so if you're interested, I can put you in contact with the research director at Global Fishing Watch. What they have found, and also we found in our BMS versus VIIRS analysis, is that the two data sources are largely disjoint because the VIIRS is detecting boats that are smaller and do not meet the requirements to have AIS or VMS. And so it's detecting boats that you don't see on AIS or VMS. Some it does, not every boat that has AIS or VMS is using lights, and so there's no way to detect that with VIIRS. But yeah, so it is an interesting line of research. I hope you have some good success with it.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Do you have any other question? Okay, Professor Nitin.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I have not one very question, but today I'll ask two of them. One thing is daytime temperature monitoring and nighttime. Nighttime is more accurate, but how much more accurate it is? Daytime also we try to monitor the temperature and nighttime. So what is the difference of accuracy that we get in nighttime?
You know, I don't have a specific answer. I think in daytime you can look at the temperature of large surfaces, such as the ocean or a cloud or the land. But what we do at night is to look at subpixel temperatures. And we do calculate a temperature for the background, but our focus is on the subpixel emitters that are much hotter than the background.
And in NASA or NOAA, have you done some work for Mars, like nighttime temperature mapping or something for like planet Mars?
Oh, planet Mars. I don't know anything about it.
I think that may be going on because a lot of exploration is there. So I thought that must be going on to see what is the temperature mapping of Mars or something. So
yeah, I'm sure it does, and the moon also. But yeah, it's not an area that I have any specific information about.
Yeah, but today I learned a lot of applications and a lot of thoughts are coming out. So I will be in touch with you. Thank you.
Any other question from audiences here? So let me check once again if there is any question from online audiences. We do not see any question, Dr. Chris. So I think that concludes maybe the Q&A session, but I will just maybe ask one or two questions. It's really fascinating once again, especially the data and the characteristics and the applications. So I was just wondering when you talk about the boat detection, and I have quite similar question like the light pollution. Do you think is there any other interference or issues coming from the water side when you are detecting the lights? Because this grid that you just talked about is really something extraordinary. Because I have been working also in this area a bit, but I don't see this kind of pattern from any other study. So my question is like, is there any kind of interference that can come from the water side, let's say temperature, pollution, water pollution, or turbidities and any other things?
Oh, you mean some explanation for the grid?
Yeah.
I don't think so, because if I'll share my screen again, I'll show you some nearby waters on the Vietnam side of the Gulf of Thailand where there's no grid. And so they're really quite close together. all the viewing conditions, the water conditions are quite similar, but let me dive in here and I'll show you.
Yeah, please. Another explanation could be these fishermen, they have already set some kind of pre-established center with the lights already there. Do you think that can be another explanation?
That is a possibility. I know in Indonesia they have a type of fishing called the lift net that is deployed from platforms that are in shallow waters. And so they are, the platform is attached to the seabed, and there is a operations platform that the people work from, and they may even live out there. And then they have a lift net that they operate, and they turn on lights and leave the lights on for a long time so that when they lift the net, there's a lot of fish. And so that could be an explanation. That's one of the reasons I would jump at the chance to either take a boat or to fly over some of these areas. So let me show you this image.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is the southern tip of Vietnam. And in here, you can see diffused detections. There are very few spots, but I wish I had the EEZ line marked on here, but I think it probably goes right through here. And so over here is either Thai or Malaysian waters. And so in Malaysia, they have more like linear features and strings. But in Thailand, there are more grids. And so I don't think there's something about the water quality or the reflectivity of the lights on the water surface or the water temperature. I think it's actually got to do with structures that are deployed in a grid pattern or in linear arrangement as opposed to unstructured deployment of fishing boats that form a diffuse cloud of detections.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Dr. Elvis, I worked with Dr. Gallardo, one of my colleagues, in Vietnam, in Phu Quoc Island. And then one of my Vietnamese students, he worked on that. So they make grid for, like, say, some kind of aquaculture. So that may be very well structured in Thailand, I think. Very big area they have made the grids. It may not be the boat, but a complete permanent aquaculture farming, I think. So they grow many things. So that may be one thing.
It could be. I really don't know. The only group that seemed to recognize what it comes from were the Department of Fisheries staff that I met at Kasset Sart University back in 2019. And they thought it was fish aggregating devices, but I don't know. It would be fascinating to actually go out and look, because we get the exact position from the image and go out and take a look. There must be something there. I'm sure it has some surface expression. I've looked in Landsat and I wasn't able to see anything. But that's not at perhaps enough fine resolution, spatial resolution to see what's going on.
Thank you, Dr. Chris. Wonderful again. Just one last question related from my side is it possible to count the boats from this kind of data?
Yeah, we do. And so in the alerts, you'll see there's a count. And so on the individual nights, you can generate counts. Now, there are flaws in those counts. First of all, we're counting detections. We're not counting boats. We think that there's some general correlation between actual boats that are fishing and the counts, at least for boats that are using lights. The other issue is that there is a little bit of overlap between adjacent orbits. At the equator, it's minimal, but as you go to higher latitudes, you get more and more overlap between adjacent orbits, and so we really should be doing some cross-correlation between in that overlap area so that we don't double count boats. Actually, that overlap is one of the reasons we're interested to bring in the data from the second VIIRS satellite, because we believe that it's going to be possible to do vessel motion detection, where you, in cases where you have 2 or 3 observations in a night, if there's not too much clutter, we think that you're going to be able to determine whether a boat has remained stationary or has it been moving. Now, it could move because it's drifting, or it could move because it's in transit. But we do counts, but I know that there's some flaws in what we do, and we ought to do it better, but we haven't had a chance to work on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, is there any other question from audiences here? So if not, maybe we can go to the end of this seminar. I didn't have a chance to introduce our speaker properly. Actually, Professor Nathan did a wonderful job already. And then the speaker actually started his presentation. So from the little flyer that we have already shared with all of you, probably you know who is him already and his details. I think the wonderful research and the academic career that he is having with him are all well known to all of us. Just for his present coordinate, I think you have also heard and known by this time that he is now attached with the Colorado School of Mines. He is now the research professor or research faculty there, and also the director of the Art Observation Group, which we are calling in short as EOG here. We do have his coordinates, and if you are interested, definitely you can directly communicate with him. I think one of our objectives for this seminar was to make this contact and also the possible collaboration opportunities an option for future, for all of us, for AIT faculties, staffs, researchers, and also the students who are interested to probably conduct some research in this specific area. I believe we will get that help from your side, Dr. Chris. So with that, I think we'd like to give a big thanks to Dr. Christopher DeAlvis. Let's give him a big applause. And we have a little souvenir from our side. We have 2 souvenirs, so I will request 2 of our distinguished AIT faculty members here, Professor Nitin and Dr. Sarawood. Dr. Sarawood, thank you very much for making time for this. I think we all know he is the coordinator of GIS and remote sensing field of study at the moment. I was not aware that he will be joining this event physically, so thank you very much for your time.